CNN has new photos that have surfaced showing that Jeffrey Epstein was a wedding guest at Donald Trump's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993. The past week and a half has been brutal for Donald Trump. First, the Department of Justice, Trump's Department of Justice, said the client list doesn't exist, which sent MAGA into a frenzy because for years they listened to Donald Trump, who said that he's going to get to the bottom of the Epstein files, all of a sudden do an about face and say, yeah, well, hey, let's forget about it. Let's move on. Well, one of the reasons he wants to move on so badly is because he was much closer to Jeffrey Epstein than he let on.
Andrew Kaczynski of K-File is here with the new images of Trump and Epstein. And Andrew, I shared one of them there, but, so let's start with the one at Trump's wedding. I mean, this is a significant development.
Well, yeah, it is. Trump's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993 was dubbed the wedding of the century by the media at the time. And although we know that Trump and Epstein were friends during this period, this is really the first time that it's actually been reported that Trump invited Epstein to his wedding. This is, we should note, more than a decade before those first allegations of sex trafficking against Epstein. But as you know, Trump's relationship with Epstein has been under the microscope recently. Now, besides that one photo of Epstein entering the reception at the Plaza Hotel, we can also see him in the background of another picture. That's Howard Stern on the far right, along with Robin Leach from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And Epstein is behind them at the wedding, almost seeming to be photobombing them. We also found this photo from just a few months earlier. Donald Trump with two of his children talking to Jeffrey Epstein. That's at the opening of the Harley-Davidson Cafe in New York in October 1993. You can see Ivana there. She would have been just about to turn 12 years old in that photo.
Yeah, you can see Ivanka right there it looks like between Trump and Epstein. All right, these are never before seen photos, Andrew. I know you also found some video of Trump and Epstein that was from later of them talking that has also never surfaced before. What's that?
Well, that's right. This is from 6 years later in 1999. This video has never been seen before in this context. It shows Trump talking to Jeffrey Epstein just before models hit the runway at the Victoria's Secret fashion show in New York in 1999. You know, the only other video we've seen of the two men was 7 years before this. Trump is at the show with Melania, who is, of course, now First Lady, seated a few feet away from Epstein. You can see them chatting during the show as well. Allegations that Epstein sexually abused underage girls didn't surface until 2005, years after this video was shot.
Right, but this, of course, establishes them together and obviously very friendly in 1999. So, Andrew, when you get all this, and all of this, as I just want to emphasize, right, has not been seen before. So you actually called President Trump. You called him directly to ask him about this.
Yeah, we were not on the phone very long. I think our call was about 30 seconds or so. But when I asked him about the wedding photo, he said, he sort of paused for a second and then said, "You've got to be kidding me," before calling CNN fake news and then hanging up on me. Now, in a statement to CNN, White House Communications Director Stephen Chung said this. He said these are nothing more than out of context frame grabs of innocuous videos and pictures of widely attended events to disgustingly infer something nefarious. The fact is that the president kicked him out of his club for being a, quote, creep.
All right. Well, it is incredible reporting, and it is important in this context as the country wants, answers on everything to do with Epstein. Andrew, thank you so much for all of that breaking news.
Stephen Chung, the spokesperson for Donald Trump, says, they're just innocuous photos and videos. Yeah, but they show that Jeffrey Epstein was a wedding guest, personally invited by Donald Trump to his wedding with Marla Maples. Now, if you ask Stephen Chung or any mega defender of Donald Trump, they'll say, yeah, well, Donald Trump, when he found out that Jeffrey Epstein was a creep in the early 2000s, when Jeffrey Epstein hit on a member at Mar-a-Lago, well, Donald Trump, he separated himself from Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, that's a nice story to tell, but you have to remember the person who Donald Trump was in the 90s and early 2000s. He sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll in a dressing room in the mid 90s. Kinda seems to me like Donald Trump, the creep, hangs out with other creeps like Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, everything that Donald Trump has said in the past week and a half as he's waged this all out war on American civil discourse and political discourse, trying to downplay his relationship with Epstein, trying to distract us from Epstein. Everything he says has potentially been wrong. He said that he wasn't that close to Epstein. Well, he was an invited wedding guest. He partied with him throughout the 90s. He says the client list doesn't exist. Really? Really? He says we should forget about Jeffrey Epstein. We should move on because it was so long ago. And yet he wants us to focus on President Obama, who investigated Russian interference in the 2016 election, the same Russian interference that landed Donald Trump in the White House from 2016, almost a decade ago. Now he wants to move on from Epstein, but he really wants us to focus on President Obama. This is just another one of those times where Donald Trump says something and the evidence says something entirely different. I mean, I didn't even bring up the fact that just a few days ago, a letter from Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, a sketching, a drawing of a nude woman with Donald Trump's signature across her midriff, was uncovered. So now we've got photos, videos surfacing. We've got creepy sketchings surfacing. And we've got a timeline that shows that Donald Trump was a creep in the mid 90s, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. And all of these things paint the picture, the exact opposite of the picture that Donald Trump wants us to look at. And so when we move on from this into the future, into more releases, it's only going to get worse for Donald Trump. It's only going to paint a picture of him having a much more disgusting and perverse relationship with Jeffrey Epstein until finally we're all going to see that Donald Trump is the creep that we all know he is.